Alright everyone, welcome to this video. In the last video we talked about user input, collecting the input, and processing it, which gives us the required information. In this video we're going to be talking about data types. We're going to be talking about simple data types and things you can do with the different types of data. If you're ready for this video, make sure to drop a like down below, subscribe to this channel so that you do not miss any future updates, and also join my Discord server. All the links are going to be in the description. Anyways, let's get started. So the first data type we're going to be talking about today is strings. A string is a series of characters. So once you put anything inside quotes, it's a string. So the first thing we're going to do to string is change their case. It's one of the simplest things you can do, and there are so many different methods you can use to change the case of a string in Python. The first thing you can do is use the .title method. So let's say we initialize a variable. Let's say name equals Python, for example. Name equals Python. Now what we're going to do is we're going to do different operations on this name. So the first thing I said is the title. So we're going to print name.title, and let's see what that prints out. As you can see, it capitalizes the first letter. So let's say we add, for example, we change the string to Python rocks. It's going to make the first letter in each word capital. So that's what the .title method does. Now the next method that we're going to talk about is .upper. As the name suggests, it changes all of the letters to uppercase. So when we use this on our Python rocks string, it's going to print out Python rocks with all letters capitalized. And finally, there is the .lower method. When you use this, it changes all the letters to lowercase, which is what we did before. Now, most times this .lower is used to store data because users don't usually provide good capitalization. So you change all the text to lowercase so that it'll be easier as you're trying to display the information. But now we're going to talk about something interesting that you can do with strings. As we saw in the last two videos, you can use variables inside strings. You can initialize a variable and use it inside a string by adding it to the end of another variable. But another thing you can do is use F strings. And to use this F string, you have to place the letter F immediately before the opening quotes. So any variable that you want to use inside the string, all you have to do is put braces around them. These variables are going to be displayed, and this method is called F strings. So you can use F strings to embed your variable straight into the string without using the method that we used in the last video. Now this is particularly easy when you're working with a large number of variables. You can easily embed them into strings. Another thing you can do is use them to compose complete messages. For example, using F strings too. And that's another great project you can do. You can update our profile app 1.0 and you can use F strings instead of those variables. Let's see how well you do. But another thing you can do to strings, of course, is adding white space. For example, tabs and new lines. Now if you're not familiar with the white space, it's any non-printing character like spaces, tabs, or end of line symbols. So those things that aren't particularly noticeable at the end, that's what white space is. Now you can use them to organize your output. For example, if you're making a text-based RPG, so that it's going to be easier to read. Now what you have to do is to add a tab in your string, you have to use a /T. A /T adds a tab before the letter or the string so that it's going to be tabbed. Now this is important as you're making an RPG game. As I said, a text-based game, it's just going to organize it, make it look better. And there's also another method that allows you to use new lines, and it's the /n. So /n allows you to make a new line. You can also combine tabs and new lines in a single string so that your text is going to be a little more organized and the output will be a little more friendly. Now the next thing we're going to talk about is stripping white space. So maybe there's an extra space at the end of your text. That can be confusing, but that extra space might also affect some of the variable that you're trying to add using an F string or by adding them together. Now to remove this extra white space, all you have to do is use the rstrip method. So you're going to do variable.rstrip. That's going to remove the extra white space. Another thing I quickly like to mention is that R strip is for white space to the right. If you want to remove white space to the left, you have to use L strip. Pretty self-explanatory. L is for the left side, R is for the right side of your string. Let's move on. So now let's talk about escaping characters. One way to use double quotes and single quotes is by opening a statement with double quotes, and then you can freely use a single quote inside. However, if you open with single quotes and also have a single quote inside your string, that is going to cause problems. It's going to print out a syntax error. What are you to do? It's either you switch back to using double quotes, or you can use an escape character, which is a /. Using an escape character is very popular because perhaps you want to use both double quotes and single quotes inside your string. You're going to have to use escape characters for things like that. And also any other symbol that is not usually printed out by Python, we use /, that's the escape character, right before the character that you wanted to skip over, and it's going to print that character out. So numbers are used in a lot of ways. You can use them to store values in games, for example score, velocity, and all those other things. So in Python, you can add numbers, subtract numbers, multiply, and divide numbers. Now these are basic operations. Every single programming language can do this. Some other things you can do is you can raise numbers to a specific power, for example using two multiplication symbols. Now Python also supports order of operations, so you can use different operations in one expression. And if you want to change this order, you can also use parentheses. It follows these laws. But first up, we're going to talk about the different types of numbers. Now we've talked about integers and we've been using them. They are just whole numbers with no decimals at the end of them. But now let's talk about floats. Any number with a decimal point is a float. Most programming languages use this term. Now in Python, you can use decimals without worrying about them. It doesn't usually mess up. But sometimes you can get weird numbers in your answers with an infinite amount of zeros or something like that. And this happens a lot, but you shouldn't worry about it because Python is just trying to be smart. But you can use floats in your terminal, in your programs, and nothing will go wrong. When you're trying to divide two numbers, it always results in a float. Always. Even if it's a whole number like 3, it's going to print out 3.0. So even if you operate integers and floats, it also prints out a float. So as long as a float is in the equation, it's going to print out a float. And as long as it's division, it's also going to print out a float. Also, a quick tip I can mention here is when writing numbers, you can use underscores in them to make them a little more readable. Anyways guys, thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to drop a like down below and also subscribe to this channel so that you do not miss any more content. Anyways, thanks for watching, stay happy coding, and I'll see you in the next video.